When hope is gone, undo this lock and send me forth on a moonlit walk. Release restraint level 0. Hey kids, wanna see a dead body?
Hi guys, this is the Void of the Ravenclaw. Welcome back to another fanfiction story. This will be my Halloween special that will last throughout the whole month of October. All my other projects will be on hold until further notice, until at least the end of October. We're gonna start our story off at the Midoriya compound, located far away from any of the human cities. The Midoriya are very old and ancient vampire hunter family that used to be warlocks and witches, using old magic to increase their physical aptitude in combat against vampires. When they would massacre throughout the centuries, the Midoriya took it in their own hands to stop the vampire threat. Because how they enchanted their physical aptitudes, they can no longer practice witchcraft. They're no longer able to use magic of any sort. When it comes to magic, there's always some sort of price, like all magic does. Every generation, they would get stronger and stronger to the point where they can match your typical vampire in strength, speed, and agility. As their magic would degrade after each generation, the Midoriya family has blood ties with the Van Helsings, a very well-known, famous vampire hunter. But when the birth of Izuku Midoriya, the oddest thing happened when he was only 1 year old. In his room, in his crib, all of the blocks that has numbers and letters on them began to float in the middle of the air. After his mother noticed all the toys floating in the air in his room, they immediately took the child to see some witches that Inko knew personally to start an examination on the boy. They told Inko that her son has the gift. They don't understand how it happened. It shouldn't be possible, but yet again, the young baby or young boy has access to magic. They told her her son's magic is very weak, but it will grow as he gets older. The boy needs to be properly tutored in the ways of witchcraft or magic. Izuku was a normal child, happy and with the odd ability to make magical barriers, even without him being taught how to make them, like he knew them since he was born. He started to make small, magical barriers around his toys, but over the years, it's just got more powerful. As he grew, his magic grew. So did his magical barriers increase in skill. Unfortunately, his peaceful life was about to be interrupted. Inko and Sashi loved their son at the bottom of their heart. Unfortunately, the rest of the Midoriya family doesn't see it that way. A vampire hunter with magic is a threat. The current Midoriya family despises magic in all forms. Even though magic could be a great asset to the family, they don't see it that way. They see it as an abomination that needs to be cleansed. One night, his very own uncle sent an order out to have the young boy assassinated. Inko killed the assassin before he could get any closer to her son. As a huge family feud erupted, Inko and her husband Hasashi knew the other members of the family would never stop and try to kill their son. On that fateful night, he was only 4 years old, watching his mother and father be ran through with a katana, watching his mother and father die. Out of pure anger, Izuku used his barrier magic around the right arm of his uncle and slowly decrease it as his entire right arm gets crushed, shattering every bone in his right arm, including his hands. Even if his right arm gets healed, he'll no longer be able to wield a sword in his right hand. Inko's sister used what strength she had to grab her nephew and jump out of the window and fled the Midoriya compound. The sister of Inko Midoriya took her nephew to a safe location that she used to spend a lot of time during her training when she was younger. Because of her mutation quirk, the other members of the Midoriya family made sure to display that she doesn't belong with them, constantly calling her a demon. But her sister always treated her with kindness, alongside with her husband, and she totally adores her little nephew with the bottom of her heart. As she trained the boy and everything she knew about their family's techniques to fight against vampires. A few years has passed as you see a 6-year-old Izuku in a nearby forest in a large clearing that is shielded off by a huge green magical barrier. Around a large portion of the land therein, as you see the little boy holding a wooden practice sword in his hands, sparring against his vicious aunt. Being raised by his aunt, he adopted a bit of her personality. Like her, he's became unstable and violent over the years. He's adopted great hatred for his family, alongside with his aunt. Izuku pushed forward and jab his practice sword towards his aunt, only for his simple attack, sweep, or his swung to get bypass as she slammed her practice sword into his wrist, making him drop his practice sword. Again, my adorable nephew, if you don't counter one of my attacks, you won't get dinner tonight, and you will spend the entire night doing training. Zuko growled as he grinded his teeth. Then he rushed forward with impressive speed. As his speed increased for a brief moment, his aunt was surprised, but she... Wait a second. Nothing she can't handle, as she swung her blade. As her eyes widened, as her little nephew reflected her attack and immediately counterattacked. As he thrust his practice sword in his aunt's stomach, making her slide backwards from the power of the jab, only to see his aunt with a devilish grin on her face. Immediately when he made contact with her stomach with his practice sword, it immediately shattered into a million pieces. Still hasn't had full control over his hunter strength. He only briefly tapped into it by pure instinct. Izumi was quite pleased by her nephew's progress. This wasn't about sword techniques or or typical sparring for training. This was a lesson for her nephew to tap into their family's hunter strength. She wants her nephew to learn how to control the hunter's strength. When he finally masters that, she'll finally teach him the ways of the sword. But she broke out of her inner thoughts when she saw her nephew complain about he feels a slight pain in his hands and a slight headache as a complete copy of his practice sword shoot out of the palm of his hand. Instead of being wooden, it was pure black silver. Izuku naturally dropped it because of the sheer weight of the black silver practice sword. You're something else, nephew. To tap into your hunter strength and to activate your quirk on the same day. You're definitely your mother's and father's son, my adorable little nephew. This changes things, by the look of it. As she calmly walks towards her nephew and gestures him to hand over the black silver practice sword. As she examined it, yep, as I thought, it's definitely silver. You just hit the genetic jackpot, my nephew. You have the perfect quirk for to be a vampire hunter. Black silver. We're going to have to experiment to see what you can do with your quirk. Rest up, nephew. Well, you can. Training from now on is going to be a lot more brutal. I can't wait to forge you into a deadly weapon, so we can strike down our common enemies. Our family. They will regret throwing you away. I'll make sure of that. After all, Midoriyas always hold grudges. I can't wait, Auntie. They killed mother and father. They need to die. All in good time, my beloved nephew. All in good time. First, we need to make sure you're ready. My training might be brutal, but in the long run, it is necessary to get you ready. The vampire are a threat, but our family is a far more greater threat. Now, let's head back to the cottage. I believe you deserve a home-cooked meal. Celebrate your progress. Right behind you, Auntie. As the years progress, so did the brutalness of his training. One thing he found out about his aunt, she doesn't hold back in training. Not once. He's had broken limbs over his time training with his aunt. The more years progressed, the more violent Izuku became. In return, Izumi was quite proud of her little nephew. Izuku finished his training when he turned 14. Basically, he turned 14 years old. Izumi forged her nephew into a deadly weapon. When it comes to magic, she knows a couple of her friends practice the craft. They would supply her with magical spell books or grimoires. As she taught her nephew hand-to-hand combat, alongside combat with a sword, Izumi brutally trained her nephew with his quirk. Eventually, Izuku was able to create black-silver weapons just by pure instinct alone. He doesn't have to think about it, making him to be a very unpredictable fighter, alongside with his many mood swings. He he could be happy 1 second, then completely piss off at the top of a hat. Izuku Izuku learned many types of magic, but the one type of magic he was more attuned to, or aptitude to was casting barrier magic. He even created many spells to weaponize, just using barrier magic alone. He could easily create a magical barrier and make it shrink in size over a person, crushing them to death. Shortly after Shortly after he completed his training, Izumi caught some sort of illness. Izuku stayed by her side until she breathed her dying breath. Izuku promised his aunt that he would make the Midoriyas pay, as she dies with a smile on her face. The next day he buried his aunt and made a silver tombstone. Izuku can only create weapons of silver. He always found it odd that he's able to create more simpler things outside of weapons. He found that out one time. Just experiment. I can't say it for some reason. Experimenting with his quirk. I don't know why that was hard to say. Anyways, let's continue. Ultimately, he just shrugged it off. He doesn't really create anything that's not a sword nowadays, but it's nice to know that he has that ability to fall back on. Izuku collects his belongings into a backpack. His abilities to create black silver swords. He doesn't need to carry his around for right now. So because he could create it in an instant in case he gets into a combat situation. Izuku stared down at the tombstone and placed his hand over the engraving that he engraved on the tombstone. Don't worry, Auntie. I will continue your wrath in your place. The Midoriyas will die, and any of their allies that get in my way. Izuku turned around and deactivated the barrier. As the barrier shattered, as Izuku calmly walks through the forest. When Izuku saw the exit of the forest, suddenly he got attacked out of nowhere by pure instinct alone. Izuku ducked and jumped to the side as he slid across the grass, as he sees a gray-looking humanoid creature with gray skin, with pointed ears, with glowing yellow eyes, with his two sharp fangs in his mouth, as it snarls at Izuku. Vampire. Izuku dodged the feral vampire attack by simply dodging and weaving around the creature, gauging his opponent. I really should consider myself lucky. The first vampire I come across is a feral one. If I came across a pureblood, I would have been dead on the spot. I'm not surprised to see a feral vampire here in the forest. The forest itself is covered, majority, so the sun doesn't get out. Perfect hiding spot for these nasty little creatures. Not sure if they're affected by the sun, but I'm not going to chance it. It's time to have some fun. Time to kill. Vampire rushed forward towards Izuku, only for Izuku to dodge his claw and grab on to his wrist and slam the vampire into the ground, making cracks in a small crater beneath them. As a hilt pop out of the palm of his hand, as a black silver katana gets drawn out of his palm of his hand, as he slams his weapon into the vampire's chest, piercing the heart of the vampire, as the vampire screeched out in pain, as it instantly caught on fire. Mere seconds, there was nothing but ash left in its place. Izuku placed his katana on his back and made his way out of the forest, satisfied with his first encounter with a vampire. Izuku can sense there's a lot more feral vampires in the forest. It was his best interest to move on before they caught his scent. Killing one of them is one thing, but fighting a whole army of these creatures would not be a good thing. He probably wouldn't survive fighting such numbers, even with the techniques he has. After walking several miles on the crack road of the road outside of the cities that hasn't been maintained for quite some time, because because of the frequent feral vampire and feral werewolf attacks, Izuku doesn't know how a vampire can become feral. It's a well-guarded secret. At least that's what his aunt told him. Not even the Midoriya's rest of his family knows what the cause is. What the cause is. Most people believe it's some sort of curse or disease that turns werewolves and vampires into feral beasts. A structure caught his eye, or his attention, when he was walking down the road. Some sort of huge wooden wall surrounds the entire village that was created by the Corkless when they were driving out of the human cities. Apparently, many of the cities that do have any Corkless population, they would be banished out of the city. It's some stupid law someone made up, leaving them to die in the wilderness by the feral vampires or the feral werewolves to snack on. Izuku approached the huge wooden gate, where two guards are standing in front with holding rifles. As they point their weapons at the approaching Izuku, state your business, outsider. I was just curious. I saw your compound in the distance, so I came to investigate. I'm what you call a wandering hunter. Wait, you're a hunter? Two guards standing guard in front of the gate both stare at each other, then stare back at the young boy. Come in. The village chief would want to speak with you. Izuku shrugged his shoulders and followed the men inside the huge wooden gate as they told the two guards inside to take over their posts as they led him through the village, eventually getting to the village chief himself. But then you came to us during the day. Nighttime, it's basically suicide out there. That's when majority of the vampire and werewolves come out of the nearby forest to cause mayhem and carnage. It's quite dangerous at night. Surprising, I came across a feral vampire when I was walking out of the forest. It was quite an interesting encounter. Actually went into the forest. You're lucky you got out of that forest alive. Those things hunt in packs. Take it you have some sort of trouble with these feral monsters? Well, the half of it, kid. They attack our walls every night. If it wasn't for our village chief, Kami Woods, we would have been killed long time ago. They led him to a large cabin made out of wood in the middle of the village. As they opened the door for Izuku to walk in, Chief, we brought a wandering hunter. You told us to bring any hunters to you immediately if they venture towards our village. Excellent work, you two. Please, Hunter, have a seat. Two guards leave the room when Izuku sat down on a chair. Izuku noticed several posters in his office of himself. I see you noticed the posters. I used to be a pro hero back in one of the main human cities, but that was another life. Judging by your hair and your eye color, you must be a Midoriya. I am a Midoriya, but I don't have any ties with the family. In truth, I despise them all. I will eventually end them. I'm not shocked another Midoriya wants to kill their own family. I heard your family is quite a nasty bunch. I've heard a lot of nasty things about them. I didn't want to meet you to I didn't want to meet you to talk to you about the Midoriyas. I've been looking for a few hunters for a little job. We can't provide you as much, but what we can provide you with, we're willing to share. If it's a job, I'm listening. In return, I will only desire intel. I've been secluded since I was a kid. I just recently came out of my seclusion after my training was complete. I might be a new hunter, but I'm still a Midoriya. I'm nowhere near weak. Intel, I could provide that for you. All I ask for you to do is do a little job for me. Very well. We have a deal, Chief. So, what you need me to kill? More experienced killing vampires, but I'm not opposed of killing humans. You're definitely Midoriya. You won't have to hunt anything this time around. If you continue to work with us, I just want you to deliver a little letter to one of the noble vampire families. We have a deal with them. They provide us with resources so we could continue to thrive in this village, exchange for a donation of blood every so often. Vampire, you say? This would be interesting. Wait, you're not going to rant about abominations? I mean, that's typical behavior from the Midoriya family. I have no ill will towards any vampire. I might be a hunter, but I don't want to kill every single vampire. It's not my thing. I don't outright hate vampires, like the majority of my pathetic family. If you want a letter delivered, that's no problem. It's an easy enough task. In exchange, I get some intel, so I get something out of it. Maybe if the job goes well, we can further do business with each other in the near future. Would appreciate that. This village could use help from a hunter. That that we could trust. I need to get ready for the night. Probably help that with that. Sorry, let me try this again. I could probably help with that. What do you mean? Just follow me outside. I'll show you, Chief. Kami Woods followed Izuku outside as Izuku placed his hand onto the ground as a humongous green magic circle appeared on the ground. As the entire village get engulfed into a magical barrier, the magical barrier stopped a few feet away from the wooden gate of the entire village. Amazing. Magic. This is very advanced barrier magic. Not able to cast the stuff myself, but I've seen many. I've seen witches in my time. Thanks for the compliment. My magical barriers are pretty strong. This magical barrier will probably last for a couple days. I only use a small amount of my magical reserves to create this magic circle. Impressive. You don't have to maintain it out at all? First I did, but I eventually learned how to create a barrier without having to constantly maintain it by feeding it my mana. Definitely have to come up with a some sort of business deal. We could really use a magical barrier like this here. Here's the letter. The job itself is quite simple, but getting there is going to be quite difficult. You're going to have to pass through a large ruined city. Unfortunately, going around it will not be possible. It really would not be a good idea. You'll be running into werewolf territory. They've become a lot more hostile recently, since the surge in numbers of their feral werewolves. I have no interest in battling werewolves. What can you tell me about this ruined city you mentioned? It's been overran by a gang of vampires. Purebloods? Heaven no. We would be pretty much fucked if there were purebloods. They're your typical churn vampire. They're not from my particular clan. If you manage to wipe them out, you should get a hefty reward from the vampire family that you are delivering that letter to. And just provide proof. I suggest you collect their heads. As long as you chop their heads off of their body, the rest of the body should burst into flames, but the head should remain, judging by the silver katana you have on your back. Quite a servant, Chief. Of course I have. It's a unique talent I learned back in my pro hero days. I never I've never seen black silver, but I know silver when I see it. Very well, I'll deliver your letter to the vampire. To the vampire. Then I'll return when the job is completed. Don't worry, the barrier won't disappear when I leave. I'm able to walk through it, but you won't be able to send anyone outside of the village. None of you will be able to pass through the barrier without disturbing the magical circle. You sure you want to go out at night? You could stay the night here. It shouldn't be a problem. Thank you for the invitation. I do appreciate it, Chief, but I have to keep going. I'm gonna be fine. I'll see you when I see you. Safe travels, Hunter. By the way, what's your name? I'm Izuku. See you later, Chief. As he waved his hand, turn around and walk away. Izuku calmly walked away and made his way outside of the village. After he waited for the main gate to open up, Izuku walked out, eventually getting to the end of the magical barrier. As he calmly walks through it, Izuku began his travel to one of the vampire cities. Each noble clan has their own city, so each city of their own to rule. Izuku could hear howling in the distance in the forest. Well, crap, it looks like I need to find a place to hold up for the night. Izuku found a abandoned gas station up ahead. As he continued to walk towards the gas station, when he finally got there, he went inside and barricaded every entrance point and window, boarded it up with wood, like glass windows and all that stuff. Luckily, it still has power. He simply shut off the lights and leaned against the wall, sitting down his black silver sword right next to him. Leaning against the wall, after he created a magical circle barrier around the gas station, so no one attacks him in the middle of the night when he's trying to sleep, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. The next morning, Izuku woke up by the sun shining through the window that has gaps between each wood piece. As Izuku began to yawn, as he stretched, the barrier disappeared in the morning. It only had enough power to maintain itself for the entire night. Izuku began to do his morning exercises in a clearing right off to the right of the gas station. It's a large plot of land behind the gas station, you could see a forest, well, right behind the gas station, basically. As he did his morning practice with a practice sword, he made of black silver, as he practiced several forms of his swordsmanship and techniques. After his morning exercise, he scavenged what food that wasn't expired in the gas station. He continued his path towards the vampire city. By noon, he found himself approaching the abandoned city that's overran by a bunch of gangs of vampires. Izuku stealthily entered the city and scaled a fire escape to the top of the roof. As he pulled out some binoculars out of his backpack and stared down to the street level to see a group of vampires moving medical containers out of a van that's filled with blood bags from a nearby human town they raided during that night at one of the local hospitals. Judging by these vampires walking into the sunlight, they're either old enough that the sun doesn't affect them. Over time, a vampire will develop a resistance to the rays of the sun, or they're wearing vampire sunscreen. According to what he's been taught about vampires, they're able to walk in the sunlight. Majority of them, if they live a certain amount of time, they start to develop resistance slowly to the sun rays, unlike purebloods that are completely immune to sunlight when they're first born. Izuku continued to monitor the activities of the vampire, trying to estimate their numbers. In the first 10 minutes, he noticed four of them. Izuku suspects they're a large group, judging by all the medical containers that they're transferring from the van into the building. Lady Himiko, we found the vampires that's been causing trouble for your mother. Hand it over. Really need them, Lady Himiko. You just could use your vampire sight. Folk it over, I'm just lazy. Are you going to disobey me? Of course not, mistress. As the vampire maid fork over the binoculars over to Toga, let's take a good look of what we have. Yeah, they're definitely been busy. Most likely the blood came from the human city. Mother's not gonna be pleased. What do we have here? As Toga turned her binoculars to the right, as she sees a young man standing on the roof, on top of a building, staring down with his own binoculars. Where she's located, it's to the side area, so she can see his hair and the side of his face, with his glowing green eyes. As the vampire maid eyes widen, Midoriya. Not surprised you're scared. Midoriyas are a nasty bunch, even for vampire standards. Take a look at his neck. You see those runes on his neck? I see them, Lady Himiko. 50 little runes conceal their presence from vampire using magic. And judging by that katana on his back, he's definitely Midoriya. He's a hunter. What do you want to do, my lady? Let's stand down and watch. I wonder what the hunter is doing here. Are you sure that's wise, my lady? He's Midoriya. Their family want to eradicate our entire species. Even if he's not a Midoriya, maybe he just extremely resembles them. But regardless, I can handle it. I'm just curious about this one. I don't see any other hunters nearby. Midoriyas usually hunt in groups of pairs of 3. He continues to watch the vampires unaware of the purebloods that are watching him from far away. As he put the binoculars back into his backpack, as he waited until sundown, Izuku could jump off the roof and slam his katana into the side of the wall, slowing down his momentum as he yanked the blade out of the stone wall when he landed. As he calmly walked into the middle of the street, as two vampires come rushing out of the building, noticing the human by pure chance. As all the vampires scream "Hunter," getting the attention of all the vampires in the area, as they all come rushing out of the building and jumping out of the windows and landing onto the ground. Well, I'll be damned. There's a lot more to you than I originally thought. I don't know what you've been doing here, vampires, but I'm going to have to kill you all. Sorry. Nothing personal. Your death is required to make my meeting with the purebloods to go a lot more smoothly. You're a Midoriya. Oh, you heard of my family, have you? Your vampire knows of your family, Midoriya scum. Your blasted family are more monsters than we are. Can't argue with that. I don't have any ill will towards you, vampire, but, like I said, I'm going to have to kill you off. So, let's skip the whole monologue and get to the fun part, shall we? You took the words right out of my mouth, human. Boys, you know what to do. Fan out and surround him. Don't underestimate him, because he's a human. He's a Midoriya. And the Midoriyas are far more than just normal humans. Take your time, little vampires. I'm in no hurry. Cocky bastard. Izuku got impatient and rushed forward with insane speed. As the three vampire heads go flying off of their bodies and burst into flames, becoming vampire ash right in front of all the other vampires. They all that little stunt got all of their attention as they all rushed forward, only for them to get their heads chopped off one after another. As Izuku's flash stepping all around the vampires, chopping off their head one after another, having a grin on his face, like he's highly enjoying himself. Toga is still looking through the binoculars. Yep, that's definitely Midoriya. That's definitely the Midoriya's flash step technique. You're right, my lady. I've seen that technique used many occasions. By the look of him, he's not even tired. Of course not. He's a Midoriya. That human family has been altered by old magic according to what records we have on that vampire family. That has the lineage goes so back to Van Helsing himself. I'm not going to lie. I have always had a fascination with that family. But to think of him, Midoriya is out here alone, a long way from their little territory that they like to hold up on their little compound. Let's continue observing the human. I find him very interesting. Izuku jumped to the left and began to flank around the groups of vampires that are rushing forward in his direction. Izuku dug under one of their fists and rammed his left hand into the stomach of the vampire as he goes flying through the cement wall. Izuku spun around, swung his sword, slashing the head of a vampire that was approaching him from behind. He kicked the head of the vampire coming towards him in his direction from the one he chopped from behind him. Izuku created several black kunais in his hand and threw them at the rushing vampire. that just knocked the head out of the way when he kicked it at him. The, the moment the moment they dodged the kunais, Izuku swung his sword, creating a green blade slash as it shoots towards the vampires, cutting a whole group of the heads off of their body as their body bursts into flames and turn into vampire ash. As the head of the vampires drops to the ground and begins to roll. As the vampire numbers begin to as the vampire numbers decrease, only half of them are still left alive, as they all try to escape the ruined city, only for Izuku to slam his hand onto the ground, making a magical barrier around the area, blocking all the vampires in, preventing them from escaping. Do apologize, vampires, but I can't allow any of you to escape. None of you are leaving the city alive. You're a monster. You're probably right. After all, I am a Midoriya. Us Midoriyas are born monsters in human skin. I'm just more honest about it. I'll make it quick so you don't suffer. I can at least do that kindness for you, vampires. Izuku flash step as you see several green flashes appearing all around the vampires as Izuku appeared right behind them and sheathed his sword into his sheath. As parts of the vampires begin to fall off, before the body could hit the ground, the heads of each vampire slide off their body as the body parts burst into flames, leaving vampire dust on the ground. As you see piles of vampire dust with several severed heads not too far away, Izuku brought out a duffel bag that he folded in his backpack and began collecting each head and tossing them into the bag nonchalantly, with a smile on his face. One vampire that was socked into the wall come bursting out, only for him to get his head chopped off. When he unsheathed his sword and quickly sheathed it back in place, as he walked past him as his head falls off his body, as Izuku caught his head in mirror motion. He caught it he caught it in the air before he could hit the ground as the body burst into flame, making it into vampire ash. As he continued to collect the heads. That was quite impressive, my lady. Sure was. They were nothing but low-tier vampires, but there was quite a lot of them. I wonder why he's collecting the heads, though. Most likely for a bounty. A lot of the other noble houses of the many vampire families once this group killed, it wouldn't be too much of a surprise as one of them put a bounty on their heads. Let's head back. Let's head back to Mother. It seems like the situation has been resolved. Took a hand over the binoculars towards her maid and turned her head towards the direction of the hunter. We're definitely going to cross paths, Midoriya. It looks like you're having fun. Looks like you're having a blast on the battlefield. You seem to be a very interesting vampire hunter. You're quite good. Not good as me. I can't wait to cross blades with you, my green hair hunter friend. But I want our first meeting to be something special. As Toga turned around and jumped off the roof to head back to her home. She likes the city where she lives. Even though she doesn't spend a lot of time with her mother because she has to run the city, but she wouldn't live anywhere else. That's where we're going to stop our part. Hope you guys have a good night and day. Enjoy my time zones, and I'll catch you in the next video.